and being dedicated to the sport. And really never been, I went to my first Musky show this year. My buddy Andy there, he's my sidekick and a good customer of mine. We've become friends. We chase the Muskies real hard. I'm very dedicated to it. And it's really not the Rich Clarke show. This is more about, I'm excited to be here with people that care. Obviously you care, you wouldn't be here learning something about the sport. And I want to give the credit back because I wouldn't even be doing this if it wasn't for people like you. I remember being your age and I was looking up to all the guys that were the lore, you know, hearing about the big fish. And I didn't have a boat, we didn't have anything, you know, we didn't have much money and all that. You know, everybody comes from wherever they come from. But I didn't have a boat. I was fishing offshore and casting off docks and doing just seeing fish in the water would thrill me. But I remember Jimmy Brabaugh and Clay Ferguson and Musky Ferg and Clarke Jackson, all these guys that were the people in our area that fished muskies, and I looked up to them. They were my heroes. And then the people that just went out, locals and stuff like that, and then people that come and drive for hours, days, just to get to the St. Lawrence and go out there for a chance at getting a giant. You know, it was just it was kind of a dream almost that came true for me. And once I started fishing, I went with a friend of mine to Carlton Island, and when I was like 15 years old, I caught my first muskie. And it was a 52-inch fish, 32 pounds, and that was it. It was all over. Then I got really excited about it, started paying attention, studying it, and I spent my whole life just being low-key and putting my time in. I'm not going to say I never learned anything from anybody, but I've learned from everyone, and I think everyone can learn from me. My presentation is more about if you have an opportunity to ask a question, ask it and get it answered. So if you walk away from here with a little information or something new, I'm all good with that. And I'm going to learn from you also. But I want to dedicate the presentation to people like you that care enough. You get into an organization, you put your heart into it. These fish would not even be on the planet if it wasn't for Muskies Inc. and organizations like that. In Clayton, in my 43 years of guiding, 10 times, every 10 years, some weird thing happens and everything changes. The migrations change, the fish die, whatever it might be. You're always up against these challenges, you know? And I call us grinders, you know, people that fish for muskies, you grind it out. You don't quit because it got tough. You just have to fish harder. Our hits come very, very few and far between. Big fish come few and far between. But having the confidence to know that they're there and believing in it and being positive and being able to get through that. I've been as low as you can get. Mentally, broken right down to where I cry. And I've been as high as you can get. You feel like the man when you're doing great. But that's what's cool about the sport. It's not a given, and you got to put your time in. So thank you, because you inspire me. People like you inspire me. Okay? Katia, thanks for having me down.
Yes.
And Zach has turned out to be a really good asset and a friend over time. We've made a good relationship, and his lures caught my eye on. I was just surfing the internet one time, and I saw some of his baits, and I saw the talent and the skills that this guy had creating the baits, and I actually went out and bid it on one and got it because I wanted it that bad. I'm an artist, so I was looking at it like art. To me, it was just great art and great lures. Come to find out, they're super musky baits, and they work awesome too, and he builds one of the best baits there is out in the market there. But thanks, Zach, for being so good to me, man. Land of the Giants. That's where I live. And I just can't believe it. I remember fishing, and I'd go out and find these places I heard about. You know, Snake Island and places like this, Browns Bay, 40 Acre Shoal, all this stuff. My father-in-law taught me basically how to get around grindstone safely without ripping the props off my boat. And I've only hit a couple times in 40-some years, but if you're out there enough, you'll hit. But anyway, learning just basic stuff from my father-in-law and him loaning me his boat for the first 2 years of my guiding experience got me started. And I've just learned and learned and learned. And it took me a long time. You have these thoughts, and probably everybody does. You wonder if your hunches are correct. come to find out, it took me about 20 years to trust my instincts. To say, wow, you know what I've been thinking about that is true. If you're starting to get a hunch and it sticks in the back of your mind, you're probably right. But you're going to doubt yourself in the sport because, especially on the St. Lawrence, the opportunities don't come that often. So it's a long time between hits sometimes, you know what I mean? But anyway, what my main part of my first presentation is about targeting a fish, okay? If you say I caught a muskie opening day of bass fishing in St. Lawrence River, it doesn't really interest me all that much. It happens every year. The big old female's there, you know, she's spawned out. She can't hardly swim off the ground. She's tired and wants to eat. Okay, somebody puts the right thing in front of them. It's a thrill. They're bringing in a fish on light tackle and get it, but it's not the same thing as a grinder. In other words, when you target a fish and say, I'm going to go out and catch a walleye, I'm going to go out and catch a bass, I'm going to go out and catch a species of fish, especially a muskie. I'm going to go out and target a muskie today, and then when you score, now you got my attention. Okay? The worst thing that can happen to you, you catch the biggest fish of your life, because then the criticisms come and you're the luckiest whatever there is, right? But you know what? I found out it's not luck. You know, there's an element of luck in there. A lot of people give too much credit to it. There's an element of luck, but it's all about putting two and two together. It's all these environmental things that are in motion. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And I won't dwell on it too quickly, but stop me if you want to ask a question. And it's really a better presentation when you talk, okay? That fish there, probably a lot of people you know what it is, but that's my biggest of my career, caught by this customer's first time ever caught a 60-inch fish with a 29.5-inch girth. And it was a thrill. We measured it 4 times. I couldn't believe it looked short because it was so stocky, and I had him I couldn't reach the length of the fish, so I had him put the tape on the nose, and I'm going to the tail, and I looked at it, and it just topped 60, and I thought, well, this is a mistake. I said, are you on the nose? Yes. Did it again. It's over 60. I went back. I said, you sure you're on the nose? I put it on the nose again 4 times, and it went just a hair over 60. And I went, this is the fish I've been looking for. I mean, a whole lifetime I've basically looking for this fish. And I went, wow, there it is. They do exist. I put my eyeballs on at least 4 or 5 fish of that category. Have seen them. So they're there. If you go to the St. Lawrence, the giants are there. Get my boat ready this year. This is 50-year-old fishing boat. I've customized it pretty much to be a musky machine. It's a 10,000-pound boat. It would take anything. Attached to it just like you do your favorite pets and family members. You know what I mean? 2, 3, 18 prices. Okay, well, this is how we got started. 2.5 years old. I was interested in fish. I was touching that one my sister's holding up there, and I guess it started way back then. 1980, my wife Georgine and I started our business. We've been married 47 years. It's kind of a world record, especially living with me. But she lets me go on the river, and she probably likes it when I'm out there. We've had 43 years of satisfying customers, and we've definitely earned our reputation of taking care of our customers well and doing a good job of what we do. If you're ever looking for me online, it's 1000islandsfishing.com. There's a young me, my sons are in their 40s now, that's my boys there. So we've been doing this a long time, in the same boat. I finally moved up to that boat, the trash it. My father-in-law was a trash man in Clarke for 47 years. The name of his boat was Trash It. And anyway, it was a small 20-some foot Chris Craft Lancer, and it got me by for a couple of years until I bought my 28-foot boat there now, and I still have it to this day. All right, this is what I found interesting when I got thinking about the sport and what all you do if you target a fish. It's a moving environment. I mean, it's hard enough to go to a store when everything's on the shelf and you look at 16,000 things you can buy and you can't figure out which beer to pick off the shelf because there's so many of them. But when everything's moving on you and you make sense out of it, that's where the science comes in. I really like doing the strategy and trying to figure it out, sitting around thinking about it, talking with people to understand it. But anyway, just go down quickly. The earth rotates, it's moving. Sun rises, sets, moon rises, tides rise and fall. All this stuff is affecting what's going on right that minute. It's changing. Water freezes, it rises, falls, evaporates, flows, changes. Weather patterns come and go. We got a big one coming in tonight. It's going to be 50 degrees, 60 degrees right now, and it'll be 16, 20 degrees tonight. You know, all that stuff affects things. Barometer rises and falls, clouds move continuously, wind blows, there's flat water, waves start, precipitation in all forms happens. It's a lot of stuff. Seasons change, the temperatures we just talked about, weed cycle, it goes on and on and on. The birds migrate. I use my instincts and skills, and you do too, to make sense out of targeting that fish in those conditions. Honestly, it's really amazing that you can target something in that when it's so fluid. Over my years, I've had way over 30-some years working with Dr. John Farrell up there. They have a biology station for SUNY on Governor's Island right in front of Clayton. They're even doing some experimental stocking. Andy came up this year, we worked with them. We stocked some fish right in the local Clayton area. They go all the way from Chippewa Bay to Lake Ontario, identifying the old spots and new spawning spots and trying to reinstitute our own fish. Our fish are genetic special fish. There's probably 4 different types of muskies in our system, but we protect that. You don't want to just put any muskie in there because we have the size going for us, and that's the genetics. You don't want to change that too much. Talk about the changing. A couple years ago, there's the floods. My boat, I keep out in that boathouse there, you couldn't even get there. You had to wear boots to get out there. I was afraid of getting electrocuted. So we went to another floating dock place. And then right next to it, you got low water. They don't seem to be able to control this water situation the way it's supposed to be. But we're having big fluctuations, which affects everything from spawning to the migration of the bait and to where everything sets up, which makes the challenge even tougher. High water positives, the fish can get up where they need to spawn early, especially like pike and things like that. Muskies come in afterwards, but the pike literally go up into farmers' fields. If you can't get up into that field, they'll go right up in a grassy field because it gets warm. Drop their eggs within a couple days and they swim right back out. That's natural, the way it's supposed to work. But if you've got that low water condition, they can't get there. One year I was catching them in 28 feet of water spawning, and everybody thought I was crazy. I said, no, you're wrong. I said, they are definitely spawning in 28 feet of water. Whether they survive or not, I don't know. All I can tell you is I know they were spawning because we were catching them and the spawn and sperm were coming right out of them. It gives you safe clearance when you got high water, a lot of oxygen in the water, longer boating season. There's a lot of positive things. The negatives is the flooding and property damage that happens when you get high water. People complain, erosion and all that. Excessive current. Low water positives, there's no flooding, But it makes it tough for the fish to get where they gotta get early in the year to do what they gotta do. Very little shoreline erosion, poor flow, low oxygen levels. My slip, I've been in there 40-some years. I clean fish there daily for bass and perch and things like that when I'm guiding for those. And I usually have literally hundreds of fish in and out of that slip. Last year, they were in there for a couple weeks and gone. They came back late in the year a little bit. There was no oxygen in the water in our marina. There was so many weeds came up this year, it depleted. There's not a lot of flow, especially when you got a low water condition. There just wasn't a lot of flow through my slip, and the fish disappeared. That's the first time in years that that's happened. So we'll see what happens this year. The water's kind of in between. It's not high and it's not low right now. This is just trends, but if you look at these pictures, okay? Back in the 40s, this is up at Millens Bay. These tributaries, you can see there's ponds actually back here full of water. You see them getting less and less in the 70s. Now they're gone. That's what's happening. They can't get up there and do what they do. That's a known musky spawning area too. It affects them all. Okay? You can see through the years trends of the northern pike abundance dropping off due to those low water conditions. In the years where we started to get the flooding and fluctuations, big peaks in their netting surveys, you can see those high points is when we had high water. The pike immediately took advantage of that and spawned well. There's your zebra mussels. Another, something that's thrown at you. How do you get around this? I used to fish monofilament, 12-pound to 17-pound monofilament, no leader. Caught tons of fish. Then all of a sudden, everything's gone. I bumped the bottom and everything's gone. That was the end of that. I had to switch over to a whole different setup and reteach myself how to. I learned on steel line, 7-strand Monel steel. We used to have special runs made by a company that would do the twist of the wire, make it the right diameter. And I had grooves in my thumbnail just from level winding that stuff. It wasn't fun for customers to use that. Level wind it. And you're constantly on the customer because if it builds up on one side of the reel, it collapses. It was a nightmare to fish with. But anyway, the super braids helped get by this and using the right leader material and things like that. We're not having as many failures. But I lost a couple lures last year to zebra mussels, just bumping the bottom the wrong way. Get a nick in your line, away you go. These things travel in bilge water of ships, get introduced to the water. I've been waiting for something good to get introduced to the water one of these days. Like a 20-pound bass or something. Okay, I fished tournaments to learn. That's how I learned to fish artificial. Learn some things, you can always learn from somebody else. Okay. The goby, freshwater drums, water snakes, smallmouth bass, largemouth bass, walleyes, salmon, trout, even birds, all eat gobies. So they became a great food for fish, and we have huge perch, bass, and our bass are unbelievable. They're catching over 7-pound bass in the St. Lawrence River, which was unheard of when I was a kid. Okay. The negatives is they travel in the bilge water of ships. They displace your regular fish that spawn in certain areas, and that's what we're up against right now. They carry viruses, the VHS, that cause the die-off. We had a major die-off of our big muskies. We lost probably over half of the adult females in our fishery. Coming back now, but it took time. They spawn up 6 times a year. I mean, it's just crazy. Okay. And this is my least favorite. You've probably seen them around. I almost got killed by raccoons. I literally put over 100 raccoons on that island myself in a 3-year period. Had people trapping them for me. And a good story is I got over there one time, but I've let them go. They'll swim in, climb the tree, eat the eggs, fall asleep right in the nest, and you still get more. I call them flying rats. But anyway, you can't seem to get rid of them. the raccoons just swim off the island or walk off when it freezes or whatever, but they disappear, and you can put more on there. I was never able to get rid of the birds. But anyway, I was letting them go one day, and I found out to get them to come out of the traps, they don't like to come out of there, so you gotta submerge them and they'll swim out. Then they swim to the island. Anyway, I've let one go, and I'm looking around, I don't see him swimming.
I've been here before, I don't wanna go back.
I said, I don't see this thing swimming. Where is he? So I walked to the back of the boat. I had a boat that I borrowed an IO. I looked over the back, and there he was. And I tell you what, your brain goes through a lot of stuff. And I'm running around. I said, if this thing gets in the boat, he's going to kill me. He was not happy because I had put him underwater to get him out of the cage. He was not a happy camper. So I ran, I got down the throttle, and I just took off, and I went in a circle. And I probably went 10 circles. Finally saw him flip off, and he swam into the island. But anyway, I jeopardized my life for that, and it didn't work. So I don't know how you get rid of the things. But it's definitely not the way I tried. But they're all over. Even in Canada, I'm surprised. You see that dead spot? Oh. Is it the top one you use for the pointer?
The middle, the button.
Oh, there you go.
Might not show up.
No,
on the top.
anyway, that's a Canadian island there. And you see the brown spot?
Yep.
They will land and start roosting, and all of a sudden, within a couple of years, those trees are dead and gone.
The islands are white.
Yeah, this is unbelievable. That was a plush island. They had a camp in there, hidden in those trees. Everything's gone. Right now, it's just a rock.
It smells awful.
Yeah.
It smells awful.
Terrible.
Like a septic.
They're there juicing the water. That can't be good for the water. Nobody ever talks about that. I can't believe it's good for the water, the drinking water. Adapting. This is all about just us making the adaptations to all these changes. We still catch fish. They're still out there. What a lot of people don't realize is that animals will do what they got to do to survive. They change their habits. A lot of what the people that are studying muskies were doing what they were doing 40 years ago, using old techniques. It's all changed. Those fish will learn to spawn different areas. They will change. They will change their habitat. They will change their migration patterns. That's one of the things I have to fight, because once I get it figured out which way they're traveling, sometimes you can stay on that. I have places in open water where I have caught multiple fish on the spot. It's no bigger than that table right there, and there's nothing there that I can detect except there must be a current or something, and you'll catch fish in open water spots, and it's a migration group. Those change. When the bait changes the way it goes, the fish change the way they go. So there's a lot of things that throw monkey wrenches into your systems. Okay? Good news is we're still catching catches like this. It's amazing to me that the river is so big, so deep, and so versatile that fish find places to do their thing. And we're very, very fortunate to still have them. I think it's more God and nature that takes care of it than we do, to be honest with you. Okay? So that kind of takes care of that part. Is there any questions on anything? Nobody's asked anything. I don't want to just be the one to talk.
Hey, Rich, over the course of the last 40 years that you've fished, how would you rate today's fishery compared to 30 years ago? Or, what grade would you give?
It's definitely completely different, completely changed. Like I say, every 10 years has been a big change. It's been annihilated to the point of almost extinction a couple times in my lifetime. And we brought it back by, I do things, I'll get involved. And we did the catch and release program. We had the commissioner of the DEC up. I started a group called Fish Inc., Fishing Improvement with Sportsman's Help. Invited him up. I got Steve LePan hired, who ran the DEC up in our area. All those guys got their jobs because we squeaked a little bit and got things to happen, which really brought back that fishery that time because it had been depleted and they weren't catching and releasing properly.
It's a good thing we got John Farrell now, too.
Yeah, he's been a real proponent and a great friend, and he's dedicated. The guy cares. Okay, that brings me to a subject.
Did we get an answer? How does it compare from?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is not what it was. It's coming back nicely right now from the big drop off we had from the die off.
Mm-hmm.
The fish that we're getting that are shorter fish are fat. They're very, very healthy. they're gonna be big fish. Another 5 years, you're gonna see some, there's gonna be some, I mean, there's still monsters there. Like I said, I put my eyes on, there's still big ones there. But these ones that are coming up, they're young, they're growing quick, and they're growing fat, and they're eating good. So it's decent, but when I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish your.
When I was fishing on my own and learning this thing, I was watching Musky Hunter magazine, right? And I'm looking at it. I go, there isn't a fish in this magazine that's as big as what I'm catching. I go, what the hell's going on? So I said, I'm either going to be here and be the world's poorest guide and go out of business, or I'm going to have to spill the beans a little bit and let them know what's happening here. And as soon as I did that, I mean, I can't take all the credit, but definitely the word got out, and the river's been fished very hard for the last 40 years. And like I say, I've seen it up and down. It's definitely on an upswing, and I like what I'm seeing. The hits are coming more often. They're good fighting fish. They're worth fighting for. Yep.
This is kind of an oddball question, but we've all heard this someplace. You see a lot of, I've seen this on Juanita, I've seen it on Chautauqua, I've seen it on a lot of different lakes where these muskies will swim with their heads out of the water. Do you see that up in the St. Lawrence? And do you see it out in
Northern's
open
doing more
water, or is it more like in embayments?
I see it in open water, and I've seen them, I call it snorkeling.
Yeah.
They look like they're sick or something. You go
Yeah.
over to them, they take off like crazy.
Yeah.
They're sucking oxygen.
Well, their eyes are above water, and their mouth is out of the water.
Yeah, a
Their
lot of
mouth
times,
is
all
always open.
you see is this. They're bobbing like that.
The other thing too, I watch on the videos, it's always calm water, and it could be usually sunny, sometimes gray, but not, you'll see in the videos, there'll be some sun. So it happens in calm water, their eyes and their mouth is out of the water, they're looking for something.
I've seen it just their mouth out of the water too, but I've seen them bobbing when they come up and down. Have you seen
Not
that?
yeah, I just see them floating, you know.
Yeah. But mostly it's been northerns that I see do it more than anything else.
And the other thing too, it happens with bigger fish, 40 inches or bigger.
I always see little ones.
No, they'll get eaten by eagles.
I'm just telling you, we always see little ones.
Yeah.
So you see pike doing that, huh?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Have you ever seen any other species like walleye do that or anything near it?
No. No, it's so weird. And every time I've gone near them, which I've done many times, I've gone over to them. They take off like crazy, like there's nothing wrong with them. You swear they're sick or something, they just go.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's ever got one to hit. You know?
No, they're gone. Once they know you're kind of close, all the ones I've messed with just take off.
Tell us about your flag.
Oh, my buddy that I worked with for 22 years, I taught at a trade school in Watertown. I went back when I was in my 40s to learn to teach. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I did it. But anyway, he and his son became a guide, but him and I fished together for years. He's not a guide, but he's an excellent musky fisherman, and we used to like to strategize and build plugs. We both paint, we do stuff, you know, we're not at the caliber of the Zach Bakers and people like that, but they started this 40-acre clothing line, sweatshirts, different stuff. They sell tackle, and it's going to grow. The kid's doing a nice job. But anyway, they have this. If you release a muskie, live release, you used to fly a white flag when you caught a muskie. Well, now you can fly a release flag, which they provide to you. You go down, they put you on their website. They'll take a picture of it. They'll give you a flag, and you can buy different gear and stuff there, lures and clothing. It's all nice stuff. So anyway, I give them a little plug because this is kind of a neat little thing, good for catch and release.
Cool. Do they still do a certificate? Do they give you the release one in place?
They do. You can go to Save the River for that,
Yeah.
and you get a limited edition
Still do that.
print.
They've been doing that a long time.
Yeah.
We saw you and the girls with a flag.
Yeah.
Katia got us something to see. Yeah, it was what, 3?
Just to plug myself, I was the first woman to ever get the white flag. I think I'm still the only one that's not.
That's cool.
I had 2 full moon muskies back to back, consecutive months, but.
Nice. Where'd you get them? No.
Oh.
Just wanted to finish, on the topic of the river, are they stocking the river now?
Experimental. It's not meant to be a ongoing thing, but they're learning what it takes to do it. They're being real successful. It's so labor intensive. I've got video and stuff. I'll show you sometime. We released the fish. They're about as long as my hand, and they are so dedicated. Those students that work over there, they feed them 24 hours a day. They hand feed them at first, hours and hours and hours, throw them pellets. Then they throw them little minnows, and they'll attack those minnows and take chunks out of the minnows and stuff. But they eat constantly, and they have a machine that throws pellets in. They beat a couple outbreaks of bacteria and stuff, which they got on top of. They didn't lose a lot of fish or anything. They're real. I mean, it's a very, very hard thing to do.
The gobies eating the eggs and eating
Well,
grass and.
that's in the river, but I'm talking about them raising them in their tanks. They have their own issues that they have to deal with, and it's so labor intensive. It just, you wouldn't believe it unless you saw it. They do a great job. I mean, and they care. The students are just so dedicated.
We have a Zoom meeting April 8th with the Gananoqua chapter, so I'll learn a little bit more if anyone wants that info to get on the Zoom meeting. And they're also talking about maybe giving us some tags. So it's an expensive process. I think each tag is close to a little over $1,000.
The scanner.
Tag the fish.
The scanner, yeah.
So
I got that.
I'll learn more about that.
I did not use mine because I didn't feel like I was trained properly.
Yeah.
It's so much easier just to get the fish back in the water, but I've been tagging fish for them for some of these pictures you'll see got tags in them. I've been tagging them for over 30-some years, and it's stressful because it's just time, you know what I mean? You always feel like it's ticking, and you don't want to kill the fish. But anyway,
Is that
it's a
for
great
the
thing.
radio tags?
They have a scanner now that they put a chip in the nose, and they can tell where it was let go, where it's been, tell the migration.
They get a
all
whole
sorts of
lot of
Yeah.
this.
It's like a little wire.
We'll learn
That I
more
don't know.
about what they're offering on
Exactly.
the 8th Zoom call. We'll see if it's something we can do. We'll definitely have to do some fundraising to acquire.
Yeah,
some
but
tags.
it's really nice technology, and it's accurate, you know, it's true. And when they were doing these little ones, if they had one die, they had to identify that fish, re-tag another one so their statistics are all right, and get it back into their program where they release it, yeah.
I wonder if there's any grants that can go towards more directly towards the musky fishery up there from the Great Lakes Restoration Project stuff.
It's a good question. I really lean towards, I think they need a grassroots organization to drive it, because politically these guys get into binds where they can't even open their mouth. When I did the Fish Inc. thing, I could say whatever I want. They can put it in the paper and it's me, you know, who cares really, right? But if John Farrell agreed with me and said the wrong thing, it's a big problem. So it worked out better to be a different organization, and you can get away with a lot less political problems, you know. That's what we found out. And we did get some things accomplished. It really worked. It was a hard thing to run. You know how hard it is to run this little organization. You know, that was the same thing. It was hard to go. And I finally turned it over. I said, if it's going to be a one-man show, you know, it's time for somebody else to do it, or it's not going to work. It ran for a few years, then they let it dwindle. But it did accomplish a lot of things. I think if somebody ran, or if we had the right organization that supported the musky rejuvenation, whether it's stocking or whatever it is, I think it would go very well.